Okay, welcome everyone to the Architectural Board Review for March 12th. And we'll start with a mic check, please.
Okay, here we go. Chair Gradine.
Here.
Vice Chair Tripp.
Here.
Bob Cunningham.
Hello.
Kevin Moore.
Here.
And I believe Howard Witosh.
No, he's
Is absent.
He's absent. Okay, great. And then David Watkins is absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the board on an item not on today's agenda? Seeing no one, we'll go to approval of the minutes for the ABR for February 26th. And we'll take comments on those minutes, please. I was not here for that meeting, so I won't be commenting.
I'll move that we approve.
Okay, we need a second for
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? One abstention. And so then we'll move on to March 5th consent calendar, please.
The Architectural Board of Review consent agenda for March 5th. Item A, 1532 Yanakappa was continued 1 week with comment. Item B, 707 Kimball Avenue was given final approval with conditions. And item C, 1220 and 1222 San Andreas Street was given final approval with comment.
Okay, we need a first and a second for approval of those minutes.
First.
Kevin?
Second.
Seconded by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And for today, March 12th, please.
For the Architectural Board of Review consent agenda for March 12th, item A, 1532 Anacapa was given project design and final approval as submitted. Item B, on the 3200 block of Cliffs Drive, was continued indefinitely with comments. And item C, 305 East Haley Street was postponed indefinitely.
Okay, need a first and a second.
First.
Kevin?
Second.
Seconded by Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements.
Yes, for today's agenda, we will not be having Howard Witosh nor David Watkins in attendance. And due to a lack of quorum for item 2, 402 South Hope, item 4, 1 second. Item 4, 101 South Canada, and item 5, 302 West Montecito Street. Chair Gradine has a conflict with those two, and then item 2, I believe, was Board Member Cunningham, so we do not have a quorum, and they will not be heard tonight. As such, we will be moving forward item number 6 from 7:10 to 5:10,
Okay.
5:10 p.m. And all applicants and interested parties should have been notified of this change.
All right, thanks, Matthew. Subcommittee reports.
No reports.
No reports. All right, so we'll go on to the regular agenda. Item number 1 is 1425 Las Positas Road. Looks like the applicant is here. This is a new item, proposal for a 4-acre restoration of the Arroyo Burro Creek corridor located on city-owned property within the Arroyo Burro Open Space Park. The project would restore 1,400 linear feet of creek with removal of man-made debris such as metal and concrete and installation of approximately 7,500 native plants, including 550 new trees, wow, and associated, it says irritation, but I think it means irrigation. Wood rail fencing would be placed along the restoration area and along existing foot trails. New floodplain terraces would be created through the grading of 13,000 cubic yards of soil, of which 12,600 would be exported, and the remainder would be used on site. No new structures are proposed. The project design includes measures to address potential environmental impacts. And there's notes about project funding for those who are interested. And the project does require a planning commission for coastal development permit, and will only be giving comments today. Welcome.
Yeah, so this is a relatively new open space park. It's down at the end of Allen Road.
Could we get your
Your
name
name.
for the
Oh,
record?
sorry. Erin Markey with the City Creeks Division, the Creeks Restoration Planner. And so this property was acquired by the city about 2 years ago, or at least the east side of the creek. It's about 14 acres on the east side of the creek, and then a 6-acre parcel, 14-acre parcel on the west side of the creek, 6-acre parcel on the east side that the city has owned since the late 90s. Let's see, just jump into sheet 2 is kind of a site overview. So here we are, this is the end of Allen Road. If you drive up from Cliff Drive all the way at the end, there's an entrance gate to the park. And it kind of backs up at the upper end towards Las Positas Road. So this is kind of the site overview, shows all the project grading activities. There's about 1,600 linear feet of creek through this section, so it provides a unique opportunity to actually do some creek restoration. This dotted line is the low flow channel of the creek, so you can see it continuing up and downstream. I thought it might be useful to go through some of the photos. I don't know if you guys got the, I brought my own just in case, just so you can kind of see some of the existing conditions that the project's trying to fix. This is a section of really steep eroded creek bank up here at this upper end of the project site adjacent to Las Positas Road. So Las Positas is just beyond the top of this view. It's about 60 feet of nearly vertical, just eroding, sloughing creek bank. This section of creek has incised over the years, so kind of the base grade of it has downcut, and that often leads to bank instability as the creek channel adjusts. You get a destabilization of the toe. So I don't know if it's easy for you guys to tell, but this green here is actually the water. There's just some duckweed grown on the surface there. And so as the creek flow comes around this outside bend,
There's a pointer there. Yeah.
thank you, you kind of get the destabilization of that toe and you end up with this vertical sloughing bank. In addition, there's pipe and wire revetment, lots of other concrete debris that we're going to be removing as part of this project, as well as non-native vegetation like arundo, which is a really invasive bamboo-like plant that's all throughout our coastal Southern California streams, as well as Cape ivy, English ivy. There's all sorts of non-natives, yeah.
I was just going to say, where's that wall?
So this is what we call pipe and wire revetment. It's really like a chain link fence style material that was installed typically up against a creek bank, often backfilled with cobble on the backside, as a method of stream stabilization and keeping kind of our banks locked in place. This was probably installed in the 60s or 70s, and at this point is literally running up and down the middle of the creek channel because the creek has adjusted and moved a bit, so it's really serving no purpose other than a potential debris catch. And
So that's getting removed.
so
right?
yes, all that will be getting removed. Just some other photos. We've got really nice oak trees throughout this property. The project won't be impacting any of those existing oaks, but this is an area where just below an existing oak tree, we have a pretty vertical bank. Again, the creek channel is right here, steep bank, just covered in non-native ivy, periwinkle, nasturtium, things that are very shallow rooted and don't provide a lot of bank stability. And then just a few other photos of the surrounding open space, which we really, the project itself focuses just on the creek corridor, so we're not going to be impacting the more upland open space park area.
Is that path this path?
Yes. So there's a couple different paths through the park. From the main entrance, there's kind of an existing road. Runs up this way along existing sewer line, and then there's a small trail, it's not really shown on this, that park visitors can do a little loop this way or a loop that connects with what's shown here. Our engineers didn't quite survey it because it was outside of our project areas, but there's a couple different loops, about a mile of trail that's open to the public. So generally, the areas that are shown, there's a couple things that are going to be happening. We're proposing what we're calling floodplain habitat creation, so areas where we'll be actually grading down the existing steep banks adjacent to the creek channel to create these off-channel, shallow habitats that'll be accessed on our average storm event. So your low-flow channel is staying where it is, but we'll have this capacity adjacent to that that can, let me go ahead and show you some plan sheets. So if you go to sheet 3 and 4, you can kind of see more of the grading details. So these will be roughly level, wide, broad areas adjacent to the low-flow channel that'll be flooded on your average 2-year storm event. That provides a more natural situation where you have floodplain habitat adjacent to the creek channel. We think that historically some of that habitat existed here, but due to channel downcutting and having these really steep, nearly vertical creek banks adjacent to the creek channel, that are like 15 to 20 feet tall in most places, the creek is no longer able to access that habitat.
Pulling all this down, that's
Yep.
what all that soil removal is?
Soil removal is,
Okay.
yeah. And then we show kind of bank contouring to meet up with the existing bank grades adjacent to that. There's an area here where we have an existing sewer line that's exposed for about 20 feet. This bank area washed out. And so we're going to propose to come back in and regrade engineered fill on top of that to cover that sewer line back up and revegetate the area with natives, as well as you'll see other little details here like concrete rubble to be removed, piper wire revetment to come out. And then at the upstream end, more of the same. Additional areas will be creating these floodplain habitats. This is an area where there's some illegal bike jumps that were graded into the site a number of years ago that we're going to be filling in and restoring that area as well. And then this is that long section of steep eroded creek bank that we were looking at photographs of.
These-
So yeah, those are large woody debris features. So logs that'll be kind of anchored in there to just more of a habitat creation feature. So to create scour there, to create a little pool. Let me show the cross section detail of that. I think sheet 7. So here's just a few cross sections through that section of bank repair. This dotted line is our existing grade, so you can see it's pretty much nearly vertical at this section. We're proposing to key in large angular rock below existing channel grade. So this is your kind of low flow channel here. The channel is actually going to be adjusted slightly to the west so that we can rebuild this toe. And then adjacent to that, we'll be carving out a floodplain terrace on the opposite side. I think there's another sheet that shows it better. This is all well, here's some cross sections just throughout this is more in the middle of the creek where we'll be, the hashed area shows the fill to be removed. So our existing grades versus our proposed. So we have these areas that are about 3 to 5 feet above the existing low flow channel that get accessed on those regular 2-year storm events. And that kind of, the point of that is, you know, we're creating this wider riparian zone. We're also, as we, as flood flows come up into these areas, they spread out, they slow down. We get water quality benefits of sediment and nutrients dropping out of that higher flood flows, and less erosive force, essentially, as the water spreads out. It's moving less fast, it's less erosive, it's less able to pick up and erode the existing bank material. This one shows that area of bank repair. There happens to be an existing large sycamore tree we're going to work around in that area. So rather than proposing a straight terrace like we're doing elsewhere, we're proposing more of like a secondary channel. So at a high storm event, the water will come up and around. This is through the middle of it, but at the upstream end, it would look pretty similar to this, where it's just a shallow insert bench that is above our low flow channel, but still accessed on that regular storm event. And then the water would kind of create a secondary channel around the sycamore tree and then flow back into the main channel. So that's kind of the...
Where does that occur?
So this is
On-
that
on that
upper
larger map.
section. Sorry to make this go all the way back. That occurs right here. So that's that cross section.
Okay.
So you can kind of see the sycamore tree right here. That was a cross section of that repair, but then the channel will kind of come up and flood around here, getting a lot of those same benefits of spreading out the higher flow events.
Where's the dirt road in relation? Is that this?
Yep, this is our trail. and then Las Positas Road over here. So then we jump ahead to the landscape sheets to give you guys a little more detail there. There we go. Color.
Yay.
So it's about 3 acres of project disturbance grading area and 4 acres of restoration. So you'll see there's some areas outside our disturbance grading limits where we're proposing some additional revegetation with native plants. Just given that there's really not much native there existing, we wanted to kind of improve the habitat and do some additional planting. The floodplain terraces are mule fat, sandbar willow, a lot of sedges and rushes will be planted throughout that, in addition to riparian trees like alders, which really like to have their feet close to the perennial flow. And then moving into more upland and riparian understory species and transitioning out to more of like oak woodland and understory species in the upland color zone. And let's see, I think we have a typical, it's kind of just a rendering of a typical cross-section of what it would look like post-project. We've got existing trees higher up that we're protecting or avoiding, including oaks and sycamores. This is an example of willow staking. So a number of native arroyo willow trees will be impacted by the project. So we'll be salvaging stakes off of those trees. You can put them in the ground as unrooted cuttings, and they do a great job of stabilizing freshly eroded creek banks because they're really fast growing. So we'll be doing a lot of that, as well as I mentioned, this will be more like our smaller willows and mule fat, as well as sedges and rushes, transitioning up into more typical riparian sycamores, cottonwoods, which are something that's really lacking on this site. We have 2 mature sycamores through that whole stretch of creek. So we're really looking to bring back in some of those larger stature riparian trees. And then transitioning into more oak woodland, which there are a number of really beautiful oak trees on the site existing today. So yeah, that's kind of the overview of the project. I don't know if anybody has questions or things you want to discuss.
We'll go to public comment and then we'll come back with questions. So is there anyone that would like to comment on this project that's here from the public today? Apparently not. So we'll go to questions. Bob.
Just one question, well, 2-part. Presumably you're protecting the area under the existing oak or oaks that's currently pipe and wire revetment or whatever with the biomechanical restoration. Can you just go into a little more detail on that?
Yeah, that's actually just what this cross-section. So there's one area where we have a pretty steep bank that in an ideal world we would actually propose to lay back to a more gradual slope so that we could restore it with native veg. But there's this huge, beautiful 60-inch oak tree right at the top of the bank. So we're not going to propose to do that. But we will be doing some non-native removal and revegetating that area with more native understory species that are deeper rooted and will help to kind of stabilize that bank, as well as doing some blanketing along the toe and staking with willow stakes to try and get some willows or other native vegetation growing at that toe to stabilize the toe and prevent that from eroding or undercutting further this way and taking out potentially that oak tree.
Okay. And you don't have an irrigation plan. Presumably you will simply drip irrigation for everything?
Yeah, we do have some rough draft irrigation plans that were put together for this middle. It is a drip system. We'll be having a recycled water meter connection on the east side of the creek and a potable connection on the west side of the creek to avoid having water lines crossing the creek channel. But I think if we go... Basically, our main lines will be buried 2-inch main lines along the top of the bank, and then a drip system off of that to irrigate all the newly planted plants.
Thank you. I find I have more questions. Will the drip system be located on the surface? And number two, will it be abandoned and removed at a certain point?
Yeah, so we'll have, it will be on the surface, and we'll have mulch or other, I think we're proposing a sterile straw mulch at this point. So some of it will be presumably buried in that, but it'll be on the surface so that maintenance is easier. And it will be removed at some point into the future. So we expect to irrigate these plants for 2 summers, but just depends on rainfall, and then also depends on success of the plantings and whether or not additional subsequent replacement planting is required into the future. So if we do that, then the irrigation may be, we're estimating that we'll need it for at least 5 years.
Okay, and finally, will this area be fenced and signed to protect it during
Yes.
that interim period before you can remove the drip irrigation?
Yeah, we're proposing a split rail fencing all along the main trail, and that's both to kind of keep people from creating social trails, but also protect our revegetation areas in the interim. And one of the comments we got from the public early on when we were scoping this out at community meetings was to have some designated access points to the creek so people could get down there and see the creek. So that split rail fencing will kind of direct traffic to 2 locations where we will be providing access down to the creek channel.
And with regard to signage, will you have it?
There will be
So that-
temporary signage for sure all along that area, stating that it's a restoration area, please do not disturb. We have a typical sign that we've done, but there will be 2 interpretive signs proposed in 2 locations near the creek, kind of just to talk about the watershed and creek restoration and why we're doing the project, as well as to recognize the grant funders that are funding it.
Thank you.
Where are those access points?
Yeah, sorry, that was on the first sheet. So this is kind of the rough location of the proposed split rail fencing. So it'll come all along the trail, and that's why we've expanded these understory revegetation areas. And there's an access point here where people are already using to get down to the creek. There's kind of a water line that crosses the creek, and some large riprap that lets people kind of almost like a staircase get down to the creek channel. And then we're proposing one more here in a nice low gradient section where we can provide safe access down to the creek.
Okay. Kevin, questions?
That was going to be one of my questions. Is there actual access to the creek? Can you describe the landscape in those areas?
So, yeah, this,
To go back to this landscape sheet, whatever that is.
I think it's L12. So the fencing, I think, on that previous sheet was shown stopping just at the upper bank area, but I think we would actually continue it down to the toe, and then this would just be an area that we might propose some temporary fencing just till the vegetation gets established, but there would just be a pathway that would be maintained to allow access to the creek channel.
Okay. And in area number 1, in this sort of more olive green, can you describe, I mean, I see the planting zone C, but that's a mix of low and sort of higher canopy?
Yeah, so there's, especially in this area here, extensively, there's a really nice canopy of existing oak trees. So we'll be just doing more understory planting there. There's a few spots where we might put in a few additional oak trees. Here, there's really nothing existing, so we'll be planting probably some oaks as well as some more upland shrub species like coffeeberry and lemonade berry and things like that.
Okay. Is there a reason other than just ease of access that you chose to put the access point there instead of somewhere else?
Yeah, it really was to limit kind of the footprint of a trail. Like through here, there's just not really good place. If you can see the existing grade lines, there's kind of this like steep upper bank here that would be difficult to provide access. And same here. This is kind of a steep bank.
This grading the existing or the proposed?
The darker lines show the proposed on top of existing. So since we're not doing grading here, this exactly. So yeah, this site was identified just being closer to the entrance gate and being a kind of lower gradient section. There was interest in our public meetings we had from a local group called Explore Ecology to bring school groups out here to do macroinvertebrate sampling. And so they liked the idea of a place closer to the entrance gate to have access to the creek channel.
Okay. And then this one you're essentially just leaving alone.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks.
I noticed a bridge in one of
Yeah.
the photos. Where is that?
So I apologize. Some of those photos were included as representation of previous projects that we've done to get you an idea of what these sites look like, you know, right after the project happens and then what it looks like in a number of years. So this is actually just downstream at the estuary restoration project along Mesa Creek and Arroyo Burro Estuary. So if you've ever hiked up to the Douglas Preserve that way, this is that bridge that crosses Mesa Creek right there. So this was right after the project was done, and April of 2007, and this was like a year and a half later already. The vegetation was just going crazy down there. And since we have perennial water at the site, we're hoping to have similar kind of success with re-veg. Just having these plants be able to tap into perennial water real quickly helps them to take off.
When in years past, when projects were being proposed at Eleen's, mention was made that because that was a fill site, that underground water that reaches this creek is very polluted. And I'm just wondering, do you have, obviously you've done studies, and part of the intent of this is to, by allowing more ground infiltration to reduce the pollution factor in the creek? Is that part of the strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the Creeks Division has been doing water quality sampling throughout the watershed for a number of years. As part of this project, we're additionally doing some additional monitoring as part of the reporting for those grants that we're receiving. But definitely the goal is to not only improve the native riparian habitat for wildlife, but also to improve water quality. So by creating these floodplain areas, you're increasing the kind of what they call residence time of the water, contacting vegetation, slowing down through those areas. You get a lot of natural treatment and water quality benefits that way.
Was there any thought given to maybe more, I don't know what it would be, because it's not my area of expertise, but more intensive sort of isolated areas where water's being filtered, prior to entering this part of the stream, to try and get to improve the water quality even before it enters this area or as it enters or anything like that?
I mean, not as part of this project. I wish our water quality specialist was here to speak more on this because she knows a lot more than I do. But as far as I know, we don't have high levels of heavy metals or other things through this section of creek that we're particularly concerned about. It's more sediment and nutrients and things like that, which this really should help to improve.
Okay. And on page 5, I noticed I know ABR is not supposed to ask about water quality, but that's okay. I guess that wasn't 5. I have it somewhere. I saw some like dashed footprints of, I don't know if they were buildings or former buildings or.
I think that was on the irrigation set. So
Oh.
the irrigation consultant was trying to basically figure out the different water demands of the different zones that we're
okay.
planting. So they used a different pattern.
All right, then I don't have any more questions. Amy, you have questions? No?
No
Okay,
additional
comments?
questions.
I have one more question.
Yes,
Sorry. Is public access limited to pedestrian in the site?
Passive recreation. So bikes are allowed, pedestrians and bikes, but just nothing motorized.
No vehicular access at all?
Correct.
Great, thank you. I don't have any comments. I think this is a really nice plan, other than that comment.
That's a good comment.
Yeah,
We
okay.
like those comments. Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a good change for this area. I do wish there was a little bit more opportunity for the public to get access to more interesting areas of the creek. I mean, I understand the concern about creating an easy way to get down to the creek and making it close to that entrance off of Allen Road, but gosh, you barely get into the site and you're already there, and there's just seems like there'd be a lot more interesting areas to explore, especially a group of kids. So, and especially in areas that are being newly planted, and it seems like the area where it's being proposed is, not much is happening, and it's pretty sparse until you get right down to the creek, where there's other areas where there's a lot more intense planting going on and opportunity to interact with all of that. So if there's a way to incorporate even just a small loop through that area, would be a big benefit for everybody, just to increase the amount of possible passive recreation on the site would be great, because as you said, there's not much else going on. But otherwise, I think it's great.
I will say that was discussed at community meetings, and there was a lot of pushback and concern from neighbors down here about having access across the creek, because that was discussed, like could a loop kind of be created this way?
I don't mean a loop per se, I just mean just even a small opportunity to get through this.
Okay.
Something, I don't know, just some other opportunity to get down into that area and explore it a little bit more would be beneficial, I think.
I have kind of a different view on it, because I see this as like an opportunity to take an area that's really been neglected and try and, it sounds like the intent is to not only restore the native vegetation, but to encourage wildlife to come into the area. And the more you have people in and around the creek, which they are going to do anyway, people are going to go into those areas, and there'll be unmarked trails all over the place, I would imagine. To me, it seems like what you've done in terms of access, and then you have this big trail for hiking. People can still see the creek at certain points, but it seems to me if you encourage more public access down there, perhaps the intent of the project then gets diminished. I don't know, is that true or not?
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. We've had comments on both sides, so I mean it's interesting you guys are having the same. Some members of the public really wanted to see this as more of a wildlife preserve. There's a number of interesting critters here. We have a really strong population of wood rats, which really don't exist in that many of our Santa Barbara creeks, and are impacted by disturbance, people with their dogs. Right now, I'd say the biggest use out here is people who live in the neighborhood who walk their dogs, and it seems like the upper existing loop is sufficient for their needs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't have any other comments either. It's a fabulous project, and it's long overdue, and I wish you luck.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think the project is great as proposed, and it helps seeing some of the photos from before and after the other sites, because it kind of gives a sense of what it can be. So I think it's a great project.
So I think all we need to do is send you on your way. We don't need to summarize the motion and vote, right? This is just comments?
This would be, if you think this is ready for Planning Commission review, which it sounds like you think it is.
Yes.
You would send it to them indefinitely to Planning Commission, and
Right.
if you could make the PCA findings.
Okay, sure. Bob, do you mind doing that? Part of the motion making, since you're our
Again,
president?
just a friendly
Let's go.
reminder for why when making the motion.
What's that?
When making the findings, just
and
a friendly
the
reminder
reason.
to add a why, if applicable. Sometimes it's not.
Okay.
A why? Do you know
Just
what he means by that?
just
A why?
elaborating.
I mean, WHY?
Yeah. Can you state why it's meeting the compatibility requirements as you go through them, each one? And it might just be NA, not applicable, in some cases.
For instance, the first one generally doesn't need a why. It just is or isn't. But
So am I looking at the second sheet here? Numbers 1 through 7?
Yep.
Okay, well, and I'm making a motion for indefinite continuance
to the Planning Commission.
with positive comments to the Planning Commission. Do I need to read every one of these or just cite them?
If you could please,
Don't have to read the whole paragraph, just the first line of each, right?
right, and just add
State why.
project-specific comments as to why those are being met.
Okay. It is in compliance with the city charter and municipal code, in general consistency with the design guidelines. Because it is a legitimate restoration of a degraded creek within the city limits. Number 2, it's compatible with architectural character of the city and the neighborhood. It's rural. The neighborhood is rural in general, and this is certainly compatible with that. Appropriate size, mass, bulk, scale, and height does not apply. Sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources. Presumably there are none of those within 1,000 feet of this site, so it meets that criterion. It does not affect public views of the ocean and the mountains, so I would guess that's not applicable. And it involves an appropriate amount of open space and landscaping. I think that's understood. Okay, so,
Nothing but.
and, nothing but positive comments to the Planning Commission.
Do we need to vote on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion. We need a seconder.
A second.
Seconded by Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Nice job.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. And we only need one of these, so you can take two back.
One more question. Yeah. Need to be off the record when off the mic. Is the wood rail fencing going to be removed ultimately, or will it remain in place?
We, so typically at other parks, we've done that post and rail fencing. Because this is such a rural site, we propose split rail fencing, which is a little more rugged, has a less treated wood with it, and so may degrade kind of over time. We plan to maintain it as needed, but it may be something we opt to remove in the future once the vegetation's established itself and it's not in danger of being trampled.
Thank you.
I had another question too, but I'll let you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do we have to wait until 4:15?
That is correct, yes. So we didn't change the time for that one because I tried to contact the architect. So we're going to be here at 4:15 earliest?
At 4:15?
Yes.
Okay.
So we're going to go into recess till 4:15.
30 minutes.
Okay.
Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. And little man, little Lola wants you. Make up your mind to have no regrets. Recline yourself, resign yourself, you through. I always get what I aim for, and your heart and your soul is what I came for. Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. Take off your coat, don't you know you can't win? You're no exception to the rule. I'm irresistible, you fool. Give in. Whatever Lola wants, her soul is what I came for. Whatever Lola wants, Lola gets. Take off your coat. Don't you know you can't wait? You're no exception to the rule. I'm irresistible, you fool. Give in. Give in. Give in. Give in.
3891 State Street.
Oh, no, that's good there. You just have to speak into the mic.
This is a proposal for a tenant improvement for a new Target location. And we're all familiar with the project. So if you could give your names for the record, please.
Kevin Groshoff from Conceptual Design and Planning.
Bill Huntress, Target Architecture, Minneapolis.
And Corey Russo, MBH Architects.
Welcome back. And so, yeah, let's see. Let's look at our comments from last time.
Public comment.
And then our comments.
I have.
You gave them to me? Yes. You mind reading those?
All right. So it's last reviewed on February 12th. And it was continued to the full board. We asked to add at least 3 additional sightline views to verify that rooftop equipment will not be visible along Lacumber and State Street. Study if adding additional window area is possible to break up the second-story mass. Find a less monotonous way of applying the first floor vertical trellis. Provide the dimensions for the pedestrian access and accessibility. Planting wherever possible for the trellis would be encouraged, especially along the street sides, with the intent of making the trellis become a green wall. Provide a landscape plan that identifies all existing species, and then the trellis middle color should match the door and window color proposed.
Thanks. So do you want to talk about how you address those items, and if you've made any other changes since last time?
Sure, and I think if we just page through the set.
If you're going to be speaking, you need to be here and
Okay,
speaking
sorry.
in
Or
one
if you
of these.
guys shift, yeah.
Just
Come down, Kevin.
Yeah, I think it's going to be better because you'll need to point at the plans as well, right?
Yeah, that works. We actually brought some individual ones, but looks like the big ones will do a job.
Yeah.
so.
Camera is easier for the camera. And our large audience at home.
Okay. So we tried to look at, taking a step back and looked at everything again and addressed the comments that were brought up, and then now I notice we've got a public comment as well. We've looked, Kevin will address landscape issues. We've looked at the sightline issues, and if we were to flip the page, is that the next one, Corey? Or the sightlines, yeah.
That's going to be page 9.
So one thing that we did do was I walked the site. This is not a numbered sheet, but I did take photos from the various vantage points that were recommended. And at the current state of the building is you do not see mechanical equipment.
Okay.
You might see a pipe sticking up, but in general, you don't see the equipment. Now, MBH has run sightline studies in section. And Corey, you could explain where we're at on that.
So 7, this one should be 7, is taking it from down to La Cumbre, looking back this way. So that cuts across this right here. 8 is taking it on the other side of State Street, close to the, I think it's a Chuck's Steakhouse or what have you. That's looking back at this way, coming across. And then our last one is taking it at the corner of La Cumbre and State. And that one is looking back up this way as you come across.
Is this part of the parapet there?
That little piece is part of mechanical intake or exhaust. I think it's intake.
So in addition to this, we took the Revit model and we did a 3D view that was across the street and down 200 feet and down 200 feet the other direction. So if you flip the page, I find these a little bit hard to interpret because it looks like stuff is kind of on the edge whether you see it or not.
Yeah,
So,
right.
Okay, stuck together. So based on the Revit model, and the building is not updated on this, but you can see we've got northeast corners and south, or north, my directions mixed up, but we got it from the corner along State Street in La Cumbre. And you're seeing units poke up. Some of these are fairly close to the edge, so you're seeing them poke up about I don't know, a foot or so, say. I'm just guessing, but that's what it looks like. And there, we could put walls there. Sometimes I think the walls are worse than the solution is worse than the problem, but.
Can't move the units?
Corey, we've looked at moving them, but.
So if you go back one sheet, so the structure of this building is such that our structural engineer needs most of the units to be up against this wall as tight as we can. So that's one issue, and we've kept most of them off, almost all of them off. They require 10 feet from the edge for OSHA. But what we have issue-wise is distribution through the building. So we have this building wasn't designed to be a single occupant. So the ceiling spaces and distribution of the mechanical is a little challenging. So because we have 10-foot ceilings on each level, and then we have maybe 1.5 feet of space to try to fit all the mechanical in. So they're placed in areas where, so like this one feeds directly into the stock room that would be below it. These two distribute throughout the floor, and then we're having to do units that it's just, these are providing refrigeration to units on the first floor. So these are quite smaller than the actual units will be up in the ceiling.
Okay, well, I think what you're going to hear from the board is that mechanical cannot be visible. Rooftop equipment cannot be visible from the street. And I appreciate you doing the studies that you've done, because you're right, just seeing the angle views, sectional views, it's not really, doesn't tell the whole story. So you either need to move the units or provide screening. And I think you're going to have a problem, like you're saying, with the screening, because it's not going to look right, because you already have that little parapet. I don't know if it's possible to move the parapet up, but, and we'll get into that in comments, but I'm just letting you know that it's not going to be acceptable as proposed here today. But anyway, so let's go on to the other
Okay, it's
issues.
good to know.
Yeah.
And when you say it shouldn't be visible from anywhere, no matter, because as you go north, it really starts to go up steeply, though. And, or is it within 200 feet or 100 feet or?
I'm not sure if the ordinance defines it, but we can get into that.
Okay.
We'll get into discussion about it later. Let's go over the other points, please.
If you want to, however you want to go through these.
Let's talk about landscape. Kevin can
Sure.
address that. So.
At this conceptual stage, we've identified the trees that are existing and the trees that are going to remain. To stay water efficient, we're going to have to take whip this out, and all the shrubs.
Speak right into there.
So it's a shrub makeover is what this is. So we haven't ID'd all the shrubs we're taking out. Speak into the mic there.
Yeah, you can raise it too. Yeah.
Bend it.
There you go.
One of the comments I heard just recently, I'm just brought onto this pretty quickly. The shrub row, I can identify that. There's screening shrubs on this side here and this side here that we're calling out to remain. And it's a Photinia hedge that's been sheared very often. If it's irrigated properly with a new irrigation system, it's going to provide the screening much better than it does right now. The new irrigation is going to go in on a medium volume drip, not the lowest volume drip, because we found problems with that. And the only tree, we're removing a carrot wood here to allow for the cart corral, and the other tree is going to remain on the site The palms are identified, they're all queen palms. There was some king palms in some earlier photos, but they already disappeared. I would have used them somewhere. And the shrub palette that we're showing at this level of design, we're going to layer those shrubs, basically a low foreground and a higher middle ground, and occasionally something a little taller, because we want nice visibility to the new building. The vines I talked to Bill with, when I see those panels for the vines on the plan, I'm going to use the 2 vines we selected, the yellow McFadness vines, very water efficient, and the bougainvillea. I'm a keep it simple person. 2 vines, 2 different species on this property is going to be fine.
Okay. All right. How about the design for the grill trellis?
Well, we talked the last time about, and I thought quite a bit about this. It was metal, and obviously it was in a certain pattern, which I've broken up into smaller pieces. And I kind of decided to regroup a little bit on that. And what I'd like to propose is actually a wood trellis. And we've used Ipe or similar hardwoods with some success. I worked on a project recently in Cupertino. This was used as a cladding, but I'd like to, I guess it'll be out here and people can see it, but I'd like to have that sort of finish. And I'm thinking of something fairly, robust, maybe 2 by 2, 2.5 by 2.5. They'll have to have some horizontals, and then Kevin and I were talking about we'd have to string some wire to encourage the vines to grow up. But by making it wood, I think it relates back better to the wood trellis that's already there. We'll try and refinish that to a similar color. And I'm not sure what the species of wood is for that. And then it gets out of the problem of trying to make it look the same color as the aluminum windows. And then I'm also suggesting that we would make the bottom ground level a darker color stucco. And thanks, Corey. And then that we would actually match the windows to that. So I was standing out there today, but we'd want it to be, it may not match perfectly, but we'll probably get a custom color that'll be in that range. And I think the wood standing in front of that and the greenery from the vines will really pop with that as a background. And I think it's with the white upper portion of the building, I think it's going to look really, really nice. And the color from the tile. And I know there was some discussion about bringing more color into the project, and I'm hoping that if we introduce enough wood that kind of fulfills that 2 birds with 1 stone. It's hard to otherwise think of an opportunity for a color. We're going to have signage which we'll propose to have color, but there may be an opportunity somewhere around the front and rear doors, but basically I'm looking for the wood to kind of fulfill that comment. We did look at the windows as well. We're pretty well maxed out in terms of it mainly having to do with the seismic restrictions. We're maybe 4 or 6 inches below where the ceilings are fairly low here, so we really can't go any higher, and we can't go any wider because of seismic reasons. We're up a few inches above the floor, but that's that just makes sense in terms of housekeeping and keeping things maintained, the floor surfaces. So I think we're adding, we will be adding glass at the ends. There's going to be a much more a feeling of transparency and open to the outside than there is now, which I think the building is fairly inward looking, I would say, at the present. And the goal here, in my mind, is to make it transparent, make it kind of glow at night, make it feel as if you're inviting people in from the street, and to soften it, and hopefully with the wood accents and the vines that will accomplish that.
Okay.
The only other comment we had was for the dimensions for that pedestrian access, and if it is around in the plan, behind the trellis?
Well, we went out there the day after our last meeting, and we'll have 4'8" clear behind the trellis. And that's, I think, is sufficient, and that'll also allow us to have a pocket that's cut out of the concrete for the vines to come up out of the earth to the trellis. So, yeah, that's on the east and the west side. On the north side, it'll come in closer to the building. It won't be out at the furthermost overhang. It'll be one step in, and there it's not going to be. It'll be something you walk around there. It will not be something that you walk behind.
Okay. Anything else that's changed since last time?
So back to balcony.
Yeah, we found that as the plan, it's been a month since we've been here, the plan is developed well. As it turns out, both on the upper and lower level, our planners have made that back of house. And so we were going to strip it away. My intention was to open it up as much as possible and have a big window there, but now it's basically looking into shelving that's just stock area. So it doesn't make sense to me to do that. I'd like to retain the balcony, maybe remove that big canopy, and then leave that as is, essentially. Kind of shows it here, but I'm looking at it upside down. The canopy really seems foreign to the building. The curving element of the balcony, not so much. So it would be open to the air.
Does this one show? Or is that the same one?
Yeah.
It's the same one.
Okay.
Is this open now?
Well, there's a door there, and so I was proposing that we would fill that in and make it solid.
And the reason being is there's a cooler, part of the market area, the cooler sits right up against that wall.
We'd retain probably the glass up here, although we'd probably put a film on it, because we don't want people looking into back of house. So.
Are the palms that you see in the photo, are those going away? along
No,
here?
we've, in the interest of being able to see the building, we've kind of not necessarily put every palm in. We tried to.
You have a plan that shows, does the landscape plan show
That's
the
what
removal
shows the palms existing, and that you got
to
that
remain?
from the civil.
Yeah, and they will.
Existing
We're
to
not-
remain?
Yeah,
okay.
we're not contemplating taking any trees out whatsoever.
And
actually.
well, it's a different question.
Other than the one at the parking, the carrot tree or
Carrot wood.
carrot wood, okay.
All right. Anything else?
I think the only other thing is we addressed directly the comments that you mailed out for ADA. I don't know if that's something for discussion here. Okay.
Okay. All right, so we'll open public comment, and seeing none, we'll go to questions. Bob?
Okay, a couple questions. In the southeast corner on the landscape plan, there is
Is it that way or this way?
I think it's this way, the front.
a broken line. There's a broke.
Sorry, let's get there. Okay.
Southeast corner, lower right hand, there's a broken line that runs parallel to the property line. Is that a power pole and a dead man? It doesn't show up on the site plan.
I think this is paving through here right now, isn't there?
Right now, there's a structure there that was used as a trash collection and storage.
This corner here.
On that corner.
Is that line? Or is that just denoting where you're going to add parking?
Frankly, I don't know what that dash line represents, but.
Okay, the
Could be the fact-
basis of the question is, can you plant additional trees in there?
We could. Yeah.
Thank you. And second question, and this is in response to a comment that I got from a member of the public after the last meeting. and I'm not sure the matter was addressed during the last meeting, but is there any way you can tint the windows facing the street, particularly State Street, in order to reduce glare during the evening hours, where lights would be shining from inside the building out onto the street?
Well, the way the California code is configured, we almost always end up with a tinted window no matter what. So the answer to that is going to be yes.
Okay.
And, I mean, I kind of would like to get some glow out of it at night, but yeah, it will be tinted. In order to meet the code, the energy code, we have to, it won't be clear glass, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Kevin?
On the elevation sheet, flip back to that, is the balcony, the existing balcony without the little canopy, is that accurately modeled? Or do we know what that really looks like without its cover on it?
Yes, it's fairly close.
Okay.
We don't have accurate drawings
I
of it
said
because it
the
wasn't on
original
plans.
set, the original plans didn't have the balcony on there, so we had to.
This guy. We're just trying to figure out what's going on here. We got.
There's, that's not accurately drawn. This is,
Oh.
but in reality,
There's a step back.
it does something like that.
Yeah.
And then this is infilled with glass.
Okay.
It's actually metal, but it's painted to make it look as if it's wood, but yeah.
Okay, so in your proposal, the glass would stay and probably get a film over it?
Yes, yeah.
And then down here, this is infill, so you'd remove all the doors.
There's
Yeah,
a single door, and then there's a couple of.
Do you have a photo of that?
I don't know that we do. Let me, it looks something like.
Okay.
Even if we left it there, which we could, we'd probably gypboard behind it. I mean, we could leave it there as kind of a.
Okay. Well, these
Memory.
are just questions.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And then as we go around the building, I see you have, you've trellises in some location, or these vine growing opportunities in some locations and some not. Can you kind of walk us through that, like why in some areas and why not in others?
The west elevation is actually really easy because we're right up when the trellises come out under this highest overhang. We're right at
Planter.
earth. Yeah, it literally is right up against the edge of it. That's simple. On the opposite side, on the east side, we would have to provide pockets in the concrete walk, which we've got room for. So that's great.
Yeah, you got lots there.
And that works really well. And then on the north and the south sides, we've got less room, and I think we need to look for opportunities, see if we can make it happen, but it's going to be not as easy to make it happen as the other two sides.
Okay, can you flip back over on the... So for instance, you stop here.
Right. Some of that has to do with sidewalk access. Mainly it has to do with sidewalk access and keeping enough room for people to walk along the building, face of the building.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I don't believe we opened public comment for
We
this.
did.
Oh, we did? Okay, sorry.
Can we see a site plan or something like that again to
Yeah.
to go through that?
So, what do they show it better on the floor plan, Corey? Or
What are you looking for, the trellis?
the trellises? Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one public comment letter, I think, that you had, that we had to
But they're
acknowledge.
not on here. So,
Are they on one of the site plans or something?
Well, they're here.
oh,
Oh, yeah, okay.
I don't see it.
It
yeah,
was
but
like-
there's
No.
just a
kind of-
couple.
Oh.
Okay, so you're saying that, especially in this area, it's pretty congested.
Right.
And people are still going to be walking through there?
Potentially, yes, potentially, or they may need to exit from there out to the front sidewalk. So I don't think we don't have the room. I mean, I suppose we could make the sidewalk a little bit deeper.
Then they have to come around that way. Because this pinch point doesn't allow for trellises and access.
And
Where
then
the columns are, yeah.
And then down here, I think,
Yeah, there was here, and then we had some in there.
Two over there.
Yeah.
so this faint line is that the overhead? That's overhead.
Yes.
That's overhead, I think.
So they're on that line, or are they up against the building?
They're closer to the building. They're
They're
probably
about a foot off.
They're about a
Foot
foot
off.
off the building in these locations here. And then out here, they're,
On the edge?
Right on the edge of that
they're right on
planer.
the edge, which in this case is right on the edge of the walk. And then here, they're probably 8 or 10 inches away from the curb. But it leaves, we measured it, it was 4.6 or 4.8, something like that, clear behind it. So there's kind of a rhythm that is along these sides. It's less consistent along the north and south side.
Okay. So these you would
Can I
presume.
pick up on that question?
Yeah, let me just
All
finish
right,
up
sure,
the line
sure.
of one thought. So these you're proposing maybe finding some vine pockets and planting and bringing those up. These may be the same, and these maybe not.
Yeah, those are definitely vines along the east and the west. These, there's several through here. We've already got pockets for trees there.
Those are existing?
And those are existing, yeah. And then along the front, it's just a matter of having enough space for people to walk past.
That is a planter, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And the overhangs, I guess the important thing too is that the overhangs on the north and south side are not as significant as they are in the east and the west. So it doesn't go out as far.
Overhang on this is 5 feet. Overhang on this is 2.5.
Interesting. Okay. Sorry, go ahead. If
No,
you
no,
have some
go ahead and
follow-up to
finish.
that.
I've got a list.
Okay, and then remove existing trash enclosure and concrete apron, replace. Do you have any ideas about what that'll look like and access to it and all that?
Well, the trash is going to go on the interior of the building.
Okay.
So we'll have these small maneuverable dumpsters that you can pull out to get picked up.
So no enclosure out here then?
No.
Okay.
We're going to screen that transformer that's out there.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to pick up on the trellis issue because I think I think the idea of having the trellis, a vertical trellis like that with some planting is a really nice idea. I think it's an enhancement to the building and a nice theme that you're adding to the architecture. And I was just wondering that if in these areas where you have a shorter overhang, if you couldn't come up with some sort of maybe bracing, a very simple like bracing system so here's the overhang of the building and here's your trellis member and it's just a metal that's painted to match the wood that attaches to the building but allows it to stand out a little bit and then get some growing on that. Because I think that would be really nice to have along those areas and then you could just do it like right here. Oops, didn't mean to mark your plan. But it could be right in that area where you have planting. That's a planter too, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. So anyway, that's just a thought.
Yeah. And that would work on this side here where we've got the trees. I would have to see if it would work. It's possible.
The other thing I was wondering is where you have parking is rather than cutting out a whole strip, one thing that we've seen done, maybe Bob can comment on this, how effective it is, but just a little triangle like that.
Oh, sure.
Gets a little bit bigger planting area as opposed to like a 6 or 8 inch wide strip. Do a little pocket like that doesn't disturb the parking arrangement, but gets a 12 by 12 or so triangle.
I kind of like that, actually.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
If I can ask, do you have wheel stops along that side?
There are existing wheel stops there now, which we'll probably maintain.
Okay, so you're protecting basically everything between the wheel stops and the curb.
Right.
For the sidewalk. You could have a continuous open planter there, which would be healthier for the plants.
Yeah. But is 8 inches big enough? What do you think is the minimum there?
I think it would at least be a foot.
Yeah. So you could evaluate
But
that.
you've got 2 feet. I would assume you've got 2 feet from the curb, the wheel stop to the curb.
Yeah. So you could cut out that whole area.
Yeah, I
in
think
front of
so.
the trellis, and then you have a healthy planter.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
It's a better idea than mine, unfortunately.
So you wanted more, yeah.
The other thing is about planting. Obviously, I'm not a landscape architect, but the building, it has this, massive character to it, especially the second floor, which, steps out, which is kind of like the opposite of what we want buildings to do on a street corner. But we've got a palm tree bus stop, and we have a scattering of good-sized palms. It seems like if you added a few more good-sized palms, that would help mitigate the existing massing of the building, as opposed to, we asked for more windows up there to give it more transparency, but I could see, a couple more palms in these big planter areas that would also have a similar effect and be an enhancement to the landscaping, continuation of what was begun and maybe doesn't quite have enough. That's a comment.
Mr.
Are we in
Chair.
questions?
Mr. Chair.
I'm the last one on questions.
Okay. Yes,
Just
Matthew?
really quickly, it's not noted on the agenda right now, partially because they're not able to get action at this time, but when you are able to give action, this requires a waiver for an alternative parking lot landscape design. They currently do not meet the 5-foot minimum requirements under the new zoning ordinance. This board is able to reduce that 5 feet down to 0 feet if you need to, but it just depends on what the applicant needs to express to you and show that there's a requirement to reduce that planter, and it's up to you to make that decision.
It's the 5-foot minimum perimeter planter.
I think staff has.
Actually, to clarify, it's the intervening finger planter where they're putting some cart returns and the existing planters are being removed. So that's one of the requirements that would need the waiver.
Because the finger planters.
You're losing
Those are
this one,
being-
and that's
yeah.
required.
We're losing 2.
It's not clear to me how it's in violation. How's this plan in violation of the current ordinance for planting?
The 2 new cart return areas are existing island planters, and you need to have an island planter every 8 parking spaces. So by removing those, it's no longer meeting our standards, but we do have an allowance for the ABR to waive that if they have an alternative design that's as effective.
Oh,
Can I make a
We just
comment on
have
that?
to.
and how does this not meet the ordinance? What they're showing now? What would they need to do to change it to meet the ordinance? Oh, it's a cart return,
Yes.
meaning, okay, I was missing, I thought it was a
Trees
little
going
planter.
away.
So-
I see,
Yeah.
I see.
So we just have to deem what they're
Okay,
proposing
got it.
is
Thank you.
adequate.
Can I make a comment to that? The trees that we're removing, and removing those things, once to the south and once to the north, those trees, because once to the south, we have a row of south trees there anyway, providing shade to that parking lot. The one to the north, the shade is to the north of the parking space. So the finger islands are put in to mitigate the heat bank created by these parking lots. The shadow of those trees, if they are there, is not on the parking lot. It's you can't park a car under it. And we have a whole row along the south shading all those spots.
Well,
Which over,
Okay,
So
let's
I
get
have a
it.
couple
That's,
questions.
yeah.
Can I?
We're in, no, right now we're in questions.
Oh, sorry, okay.
And we're probably taking too long with that. I got us off track by making a comment. So on the trellises, what are the size of the members?
I was saying something like 2 by 2, 2.5 by 2.5, something like that.
Because they look bigger on the elevations. They
Yeah,
look like this.
they are emphasized to make it look stronger, yeah. They were getting too fine in the way we were rendering them, so I asked the renderer to make it look a little bit chunkier, but yeah.
So are you going to make it chunkier, or are you going to stick with the 2x2?
2x2, and I think what's shown there is probably 4x4 or
Yeah.
something like that.
All right. And I kind of missed it on the color. It sounded at one point like you were going to match the trellis.
I'd like to try and get the color of the trellis now, which has been painted kind of a really deep brown, to have more of this glow that you see in the...
Okay. So that's what you're shooting for.
That's what I'm shooting for, because I think the contrast is what's going to make it look really nice against the darker background wall.
Okay. I think that's all I had. So, Amy.
Just the couple additional, since we've talked about the vines, they will be on the east and west side, right? Because right now they're
Yes.
not being shown on the east.
In our latest elevations, we show them...
The elevations show
Yeah.
the green, but
Yeah.
the plans
Oh,
don't show
okay, I
any
see. So-
vine pockets, so
Okay.
that would be
That needs to
something.
be updated, yeah.
And then as far as the transformer, how are you planning to screen that?
On the shrub list, got a lot to pick from.
If we want to go to the
Either my
landscape plan.
silverberry, Elaeagnus, or Dodonea, the hopseed bush,
So,
from this list.
taking a point. Is there a photo of which?
We're showing all the.
Or, and I guess how tall is the transformer?
Transformer's just under 4 feet. Closer to 3 feet. I was just out there this morning. So the silverberry is going to work fine. The Dodonea is actually going to be might look a little too tall back there. So I'm going to screen it with the appropriate size shrub from
Okay.
this list.
Okay. And then do you have a sample of the existing building color to just hold against these?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I mean,
It would be-
the intention would be to match the white color that's
Yeah,
there
it'd just
now.
be good to see them next to each other.
I'm going to be
But-
there tomorrow morning, and I've got a color fan deck. I'm going to verify that.
Okay. That was all I had.
But
Okay.
we can submit the colors once I find out what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, no, just wondering, just to see it next to the ones that you're proposing.
Okay.
All right. So we're into comments now. Bob, you want to start? And if you could address the finger planter issue.
Okay, I think the amount of planting they have in the parking, or at the edges of the parking lot, is sufficient that we can dispose of those planters without it being an issue.
Okay.
I would say, though, that if it's possible to plant an additional tree in the southeast corner, that would be advisable, and then plant a tree in the blank space between the two existing trees where the one planter on the south side is being removed. Basically any blank spots that you've got along the edges,
Keep that rhythm going.
let's fill them in if you can. And, I like the consistency of the plan, but it is a little monotonous, and, unless, I don't know, I'm on the fence regarding whether or not it would be nice to have a different species of tree along those two sides. Again, it's going to be different than the carrot wood, but you've got a ton of carrot woods. And just consider that. It won't bother me if you come back with carrot woods, but
You're
please
talking
consider,
about these two sides?
yeah, consider a little bit more diversity. With the vines on the trellises, it's been my experience over a long period of time that most vines want to just grow up, and they will leave the bottom part of the vine bare. And I think the two that you've got specified will probably behave that way, particularly the cat claw vine. I would suggest something like star jasmine, which stays green from top to bottom, is a low water conserving plant. It would also require less maintenance in terms of shearing regularly, and will also take the different orientation, sun and shade, better than either the cat claw or the bougainvillea. So I would encourage you to try, consider something like that.
Well,
Let's see. With regard to the transformer, I would suggest that you consider screen plants that don't require hedging. The silverberry, I think, would, and it would be, better for, just from the sustainability standpoint, to have something that'll provide that 4 feet of vertical coverage without having to be sheared, reducing green waste. And finally, the trellises, to me, still have, kind of a jail feeling to them with the vertical members, and I think it might be, advisable to just consider either a grid or horizontal members. Because basically all you want eventually is a green screen there. So, for the time being, though, you're going to have the verticals, which I think are going to look like a jail. And I would prefer to see something, either horizontal or a grid.
Yeah.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Bob, how about my crazy idea about adding some more palms? Maybe smaller or
Oh,
different
that's
species that's
crazy.
lower? Huh?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Basically, yeah. And either matching existing or another species altogether, if that's your design preference.
Okay. Thanks. Sir.
I think as far as the finger planters in the parking lot, I agree. I think that can be mitigated with the addition of trees. I think I could support that. Is it a modification or is it a waiver? It's a waiver, I think. I can support that waiver. And I agree, I think a little bit more variety in the tree palette would be nice. So to help it blend in a little bit better. On the architecture side, I am struggling with this idea of this trellis going around the bottom. I think it's a nice idea, but with the site constraints that you're dealing with, you don't have enough of it to really make a big impact and really change the appearance of the building. I think, this building has such a strong presence and design, for better or worse, that little move isn't going to help the project, in my opinion. So, and I think the cladding doesn't necessarily help. I think it might be better. I like the idea of planting around the base, but only if you can get almost a continuous wrapping of that base in some sort of a vine or some sort of greenery. Then I think that would be transformative enough for the building to really change its overall appearance. So if that's a matter of mounting green screen up against the side of the building and growing vines on that, and then the windows are just sort of punctuations in that sort of green wall, I think that would be more effective in my mind. And I think less. One other thought is I think this trellis idea is, as Mr. Cunningham pointed out, I think while it seems like good now, I wonder what it's going to be like in a few years. Is that going to look dated relatively quickly? And I think the loss of those openings on the Lacumba Road side, on the ground floor, I think that's regrettable, and I don't think having just a blank section of wall where there was an opening is acceptable in this case. And, yep. Those may not always be there.
What's that?
Those trees may not be there, but.
Sure.
And I wish we knew a little bit more what was going on under that round canopy. Like what does that actually look like if you were to take that off?
Mm-hmm.
what's there. So
Around, oh, the canopy.
on the second floor,
On the second floor.
on the balcony. So those are my comments.
Okay. Amy, please go ahead.
Just to pick up on what Kevin was talking about the trellis, I'm kind of in agreement if it's actually more of like a green wall that's closer to the building, so it's more integral to the structure. I think it might be more successful. And then also just updating like the plans to show exactly like where those plantings are, if they're shown in like the elevation, to make sure that they're located in the plan. And to also bring just the base color of that white to, because I do like the colors that you're proposing for the base. I think that the darker color would be effective. I think it would look nice, but it'd be good to see it against the white to see, the shade. But I think the rest of and I also would support the site plan as they're proposing, with, Bob's comments on like the additional trees. But yeah, I think for me it's just addressing that trellis so that it's more integral. It's really kind of part of your project and not necessarily like mimicking what's next door. I feel like it could be its own thing and be part of the building.
Do you have comments from last time? So our comments last time on the trellis were find a less monotonous way of applying the first floor vertical trellis. That was our comments, and that's what you did. So I think for us to come back and say, no, it ought to be next to the building, or it should be more continuous, that would be different than what we said the first time. So I don't think that's fair of the board to go in that direction. I do like Bob's comment about going horizontal. And I think, obviously there's many ways to think about this and to solve the issue. But I actually think the larger members look better. But if you went horizontal, then maybe just the frame is heavier, and then the intermediate boards, horizontal members are back to 2x2s. But I do think the heavier member, because of the massiveness of the buildings and of other components of the building. In fact, I remember when this trellis came through, we asked them to upsize the members just to give it some of the beefiness that the building already has. So I think it would feel like it's integrated more with the building if there was some more larger members than 2x2, number one. And then I think the horizontal is a good idea. I think that in regards to Kevin's comment and Amy's comment about it, I think, rather than having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trellises, maybe there's a way to do like 3 on this side. Mm-hmm. Maybe they could be longer, more continuous, and then they become like, again, more massive statement that kind of goes along with the massiveness of the building. As opposed to these little things. But I think that's, a design feature that could be solved a number of ways. But to me, I think, like, to take these 3 and make it 1, and to have this just be 1 here. Maybe there's 3. There's 1 here, there's a bigger one here, and there's 1 on this side. Something like that. But on the other hand, those are passages for your users. So to have a big long bank that's dark and growing with on one side, maybe that's not a great idea either. And maybe you're going to end up, getting vagrants back there or people using it at night. I don't know. So that's maybe a consideration as well. But I think it needs a little bit more restudy and redefinition, and the idea that it's to integrate it more with the building and in terms of the composition and proportions.
Can I comment, or is this not the time to comment?
Well, I think we're having problems just, summarize. We want to give you a definitive direction going forward. So let us get through that. I didn't hear any other board members comment about the equipment on the roof, but I would assume they're all in agreement that it simply should not be visible at all, and that we'd prefer not to make the building any taller by adding, either extending the existing wall up or adding another wall behind it. So if to please study moving the equipment to areas where it's not visible, it's simply not visible. And that can be done, there's ways to do that, even if you have to then extend ducting for where you do your drops. Yes?
I was going to say it could be that, or is this an alert for mandatory evacuation?
Yeah, might as well announce that. We're just receiving an emergency alert on our phones for mandatory evacuation order for extreme risk areas. Folks should, so there's red areas and yellow areas, and it's at 8 p.m. this evening.
Or what type
It's
of-
in Santa Barbara
Sure.
because of our recent mudslides and fires that we've had, yeah. Folks who are in those areas, they know. All right. Amy, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to comment that if they could relocate or just propose some sort of screening, I would be okay with that. But that was just a comment.
Okay. I think given how large that flat roof is, it seems to me there's plenty of room that you can consolidate and locate without having it be visible and without adding another rooftop screening element. But because it only looks like there's and I'll add one other point about that is that particularly we're concerned about from the street side, that if you're standing here on the edge of this parking lot and you're able to see, and I don't know if is anyone ever going to stand right there? I mean, the nearest they're going to be is right there, and as soon as you start getting close to the building, you're not going to see that equipment. So this, in my view, from this side and this side you can't see it at all because you're too close. So this is not as important as the other two sides. If you can accomplish it being invisible entirely from the street, that would be what we'd be looking for. Okay, so I'm going to try and summarize the comments, and board members can chime in after I've done the summary, make notes about particular ones if needed. So I'm going to go over the comments about the landscaping. First, the study adding trees to both the east and the south side of the southeast corner. Study planting material for screening the transformer that does not require hedging. Consider, although it's not mandatory, adding some diversity to the perimeter planting. At the trellises, consider a star jasmine or similar to encourage full growth at full height. Studying adding additional palms, could be of alternate species, maybe ones that are not quite as tall as the ones that are there now, both along the State Street and La Cumbres roadside, as well as in the planters on the east side entrance. show planting on the landscape plan for the trellis, the vertical trellis areas, with a suggestion that the space between the tire bumper and the sidewalk be used for a minimum of 12 inches, a 12-inch wide planter. No mechanical equipment should be visible from the street sides. Restudy. Well, I'm going to say that you addressed their comment from last time regarding the trellis, that you found a less monotonous way of applying the trellis, and we didn't. There was a comment about, oh, it's, you know, it looks jail-like last time, but we didn't say horizontal. But I think that's a really good comment. That it is going to look less like a fence or a barrier if the members are horizontal.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Kevin mentioned green screen. I think that might be an alternative you want to consider, since presumably it's going to be covered with vegetation, you know, over a period of time anyway. I think you can get it as a manufactured panel. It might be less expensive. Just something to consider. A metal grid, basically.
Within a wood frame?
It's a metal frame.
I don't think it needs
Well, to me, just putting up a metal grid is not going to make it.
Okay.
And,
Well,
and
then
with the
within a
expanse
frame
that we're
would be
talking
nice,
about
sure.
here. Huh?
Within
Unless
a
it was
frame.
against a wall, because they're not talking about, they're not proposing it against the wall. And that's a whole different scheme. And we didn't make that suggestion last time.
Okay, but
And we gave them a direction. We gave them a direction, and now we're reversing our direction. I don't think that's.
We're reversing it. I
I'm
think
not
we're commenting on it.
Okay, well, that's my view on it.
I'm not trying to reverse the direction. I mean, yes, it can be framed. It's just an alternate material that will, you know, serve the same purpose, probably be lower cost maintenance, and again, it's going to be covered with landscaping ultimately anyway.
Yeah. Well, okay. So if we are, let's take a straw vote. How many board members? Because it sounds to me, it's pretty clear to me that you want to have this trellis system away from the building. That is problematic. That it would be problematic to try and cut in planters directly connected to the building and to put plants on the building. But you respond to that?
I'd say what's primary to me is to soften the building and to introduce the landscape. It's possible it could go up against the wall if we've got sufficient room. I'm not opposed to that idea. Actually, I think that's kind of an intriguing idea. But there'd have to be enough room for a planter and green screen or whatever device we used against the wall to make that happen. And I'm not 100% sure if that's the case, but we can verify that.
Okay, well, to me, if that's what we wanted last time, we should have made that clear, because you've done a lot of extra work and study to get here, and now we're saying, no, it's not working still.
Well, I wasn't advocating for that. I was advocating for the green screen instead of the trellis.
Yeah.
That's
all.
all.
Okay, in that case, if we're talking about a green screen that's located in the ways that you've located it, I think it should have a wood frame, as opposed to just a metal screen that's hanging there.
Mr. Chair, if I can add my 2 cents. So the comments last time were based on what was presented, right? We found it not successful. We suggested some alternatives. They came back and presented this. Personally, I don't think this is successful either. That's where my comment comes from.
I got that.
And so I don't think we're going off base by responding to what's being presented here.
Okay, all right. Well, we asked for a less monotonous way of applying the first floor vertical trellis. We didn't tell them to take it out. We didn't tell them to move it next to the building. We said find a less monotonous way. So I think they made an attempt.
Yep.
I think it needs to go further. Yep. In my view, this is my view. And so since I'm summarizing the comments, and I'll go ahead and articulate what my viewpoint is, and then we can vote on it. So number one, I do think it needs further restudy. I think if it's going to be located in the manner that it's shown, that is out 4 to 5 feet from the building, that the wood members, some of the wood members should be heavier, more substantial, and that you could consider a green screen as opposed to
Metal
2x2s, as opposed to 2x2s. Yeah, metal fabric screen. Since the idea is that it would eventually be covered by planting. The other comment I would make about it is that rather than the, say, very broken up composition that you're showing, is that you consolidate the pieces so that, for example, on the east elevation, instead of having 8 vertical fences, you have 2 or 3. And similarly on the west elevation, and on the north elevation, instead of having 2, couldn't it just be 1? Or could another one be added on the other side of the main entry? So I think there's some restudy there that would be a better solution that also would go better with the building. I think that's all I've got. And yeah, I like the idea about the wood color also of trying to lighten up that existing trellis, because I do think the color is too dark and heavy. And I didn't ask about this red that's showing at the bottom of the windows. That's interior?
That's interior. That's the back of the, typically where we have glass areas, we try to keep the fixtures, the interior merchandise fixtures lower, so they're 44 inches approximately, but we have a backer piece on that, which could be white, it could be red. We're showing it as red, but it could be white or gray or red, I think are the options. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I think anything other than window color, in other words, something that you can't see from the outside, would be considered signage. Matt, maybe you can comment on that?
Give me one moment while I pull it out.
So, we'll leave that open for the moment. So that would be the motion.
I'll second the motion.
We have a seconder, so.
Under discussion, so if the applicant wanted to look at moving the green screen closer to the building, and they can, I mean.
Yeah, that's a good way to state it. We could say, as an alternative to the comments that we've made about the trellis, you could look at attaching a green screen to sections of the
building.
Of the existing building,
and then
yeah.
You could have larger areas. And then also just to provide the paint color of the white of the base building.
To provide a what?
Just the paint sample of the white of the building, of this.
Okay.
To just put against the color that they're looking at.
Okay. Do you have a color board yet?
We brought one in previously.
We brought it
Okay.
in previously, and I was modifying it by showing this, but.
Okay. I
And
think
also-
board members, no one commented on the gray, but I think
I
we
did.
think it's okay. You did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I said I liked it.
Okay.
That was all I wanted
I
to
have
add.
the definition of a sign here, and I think we could probably make a case either way. But it says any form of visual communication, including any physical object, projection of light, digital display, or open flame, used to announce, declare, demonstrate, display, or otherwise present a message to or attract the attention of the public.
Then
I don't really see it as.
I think we would need to approve, whatever they propose to put in the windows as part of the color program for the building. And I would not be in favor of red.
We can manipulate that, so
Yeah.
it does not have to be red. It can match the wall or be a neutral color.
But it's needed as a screen because you have shelves in there or something?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is most board members would not be in favor of the red that's being shown.
I don't.
Well, this
see it- I
board
don't-
member wouldn't.
I don't see it as,
Randy.
I don't see it as signage, so it doesn't bother me. Especially if the glass is tinted, I mean, I don't.
What's your view on it, Kevin?
I mean, we asked them to make the openings as big as possible.
Yeah.
And that's a part of the stores. We're going to end up seeing some color and some.
So the red's okay? For you? So I think we have 2 against 2 here about that.
In my opinion, if you're going to put a panel in the window, it should just be the same color as the window. So if it can be a dark panel that during the daytime doesn't come out as a different color than the window.
Well, we have
That would be
options.
my
We can work with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll add that to the study options for the red that is shown at the base of the windows.
And Mr. Chair, is anybody else concerned about the west elevation and getting a little bit more understanding about what's going on there, as well as walling off that door?
We could ask for more clarity, but right now it is covered with planting, and I like that fact that it is. But yeah, we could ask, provide more clarity on the design concept of what's being removed and what's replacing it on the west elevation at the balcony.
But you're concerned about the ground level as well, or just the balcony level?
I am. Doesn't sound like others are.
I guess my concern would be that, by removing that hood, we're now getting a building that's even more flat and uniform at the second level, so that maybe.
But we have requested additional palm planting along that side.
That's true, we have. That's true.
And that, they'll, not only will the palms be in front of the building, but their shadows will be cast on the building in the afternoon. So that may be sufficient. I think when they come back with a revised landscape plan, they should revise also the elevations to show those palms in front of the building.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind providing a drawing that shows that without the palms and one so that we can see the building, but then have one that has the palms as well.
Mm-hmm.
Exterior elevation on at least on the 2 street sides. All right. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair, we didn't say if that was where the continuation was.
That's true. We didn't. Do you want to come back in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Is that possible?
2-week continuance.
There's absolutely no room just because of all the delays that we had, postponements.
Let me raise another question with the board. Is there a reason why we couldn't grant this preliminary approval? Project design approval?
It's comments only at this time.
Comments only,
Mhm. Because we haven't had a chance to plan check.
Oh.
It was just
So
some
where would-
upheaval in staffs, and there was some confusion about who was doing it.
So where else would we send it except back to the full board?
You could send it to consent. You could send it back here. It's just up to you guys.
That's confusing.
So the next available agenda would be April 23rd.
I think it probably should come back to the full board because there's a number of large-scale issues still, it's still undefined. So continue to April 23rd then. And I think we already voted.
Okay. What was the vote? Sorry.
4-0.
4-0? Okay.
And the motion does include that comment about the board is willing to consider an option of moving the green screen back against the building and planting against the building.
Okay.
Does it
Under
include-
discussion?
Yeah, those were all.
Yeah,
well,
that
we
should
had-
be included as part of the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of commented on a bunch of things under discussion. There was a
On
number.
video, we'll
There was
get
a
it.
number.
We'll get it. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just need one set.
One set?
That's all we need, yeah. He's got one.
If we could have two.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You need one that wasn't marked, that put some red lines on that edge. Does that matter? No. Thank you.
Can we take the next project if they're here? No.
Yeah.
They're here.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be at 5:10, and it's 5:27.
Oh, yeah.
That clock's not.
So we're on item 6, 127 Eucalyptus Hill Road, Circle. This is a new item. Proposal for a new 2,668 square foot, two-story, single-family residence with 394 square foot attached two-car garage within the Eucalyptus Hill Circle planned unit development. Proposed residence would be attached to the existing residence at 125 Eucalyptus Hill Circle. It will be the fourth attached unit in the building and the 28th unit in the complex. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. The project requires an environmental finding under CEQA. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Cottrell, architect, with Charles Harker, the owner.
Hi.
So we've got, like you mentioned, a PUD. It was finalized in 1967. 27 of the 28 units were built out. This last one, for some reason, was not. So in, I think, 1998, the owner of 125 and 127 went to build out the fourth unit, got approved, ran out of money. So now we're back, new owners, same concept. We're building this last unit to fit in with the existing PUD. It's attached, so the PUD, sorry, you can see it up here. Our little row here, these four, are in the middle of Eucalyptus Hill Circle. It's right here. And then our lot is right next to that guy right there. So we are looking at these three just to match in with those, thank you so much, with these three and sort of unify the development. We've got a letter from the HOA approving it and fully supporting it. They've also granted a stormwater easement. So when this was first developed, there was no Tier 3. So on these little parcels, there's no way to do Tier 3. So the HOA has approved doing the Tier 3 for this parcel on the HOA land. Just some photos. So this is 125, and then right next to it, the empty lot is 127. Again, this is 125, and these are the upper two, the two above it.
This is 125?
This is 125, and this is 123.
That's existing.
Yep, existing. Proposed.
Okay. But you've shaded this because?
Mr. Harker owns this one as well.
Oh.
And it's just the neighbor.
That's so the hatched is the new?
You got it.
Okay.
Just the hatched. I'm sorry about that. So if we can just jump over to the plans. So this is existing 125, and 125 also has an existing garage and hobby room on the parcel of 127. So we've got an existing driveway and garage that we are then going to convert as our new garage. So this is going to stay, and this is going to be 127's garage. So we're kind of locked in on plates and those kind of things. So this is 125. This is our proposed on 127. After we get this approved, we're going to move the lot line so it makes sense. So they built out 125 5 feet over 125's lot line into 127. So it's a straightforward 3-bedroom, 3.5 bath. The lot line's right here. It's tucked right around it. We've got, like all the other 3 that are there, it's a 2-story residence. They all have this, entry with stair up. Views, south views are off this way, so we put the family and living room, getting the views. Upstairs, we got master suite and another suite bedroom with a small balcony that is tucked away from 125. And elevation-wise, there's a quick roof plan. Roofs are just meant to mimic what's there. Elevations, the way we did this is showing you the existing and then proposed. So the existing, we knock this roof off and just carry that same line across. There's that outdoor master suite. And then we're cutting into the roof down below to get the windows in the guest room. So then this is existing, that west side wall, and then proposed. And then there's only a third elevation because it's tucked right next to unit 125. So again, existing and then proposed down here. This is the entry. So we've got like I said, the driveway and garage are set. So we just had to work with the site to get to the front door. Basically, the footprint, you've got to work around it to get up to the front door. So trying to match the existing materials, colors, everything else. So the palette is a vertical wood siding and a stucco, and that's the rest of the property has that same material palette. And we've got a couple renderings for you. So you can see those upper 2, and we modeled 125, and then here's 127. And there's the back view of it. So this is 125, that's 127. And then we have just a preliminary stormwater management plan just to prove that we can get Tier 3 in.
Okay.
Charles, did you have anything to add that I missed?
Okay, so we'll open public comment. Looks like there's some folks who'd like to comment on this project. Have you submitted speaker slips? Okay. Well, why don't we'll take you one at a time. We'll start on this side, but after you come up and speak, you'll need to fill out a speaker slip so we have a record of that you were here. Please come on up. You guys will need to sit in the front row for a while we get public comment.
I'm Carol Dickey.
Oh, please come up. We need to have you speak into the microphone and be on TV.
And you all get 2 minutes.
I'm Carol Dickey. I have lived at Eucalyptus Hill Circle for 22 years. I've been on the board for 20 years. And I would like to say that Mr. and Mrs. Harker have been wonderful people to deal with. They're extremely knowledgeable, and we feel reliable about what they say they're doing. We have a homeowners association has an architectural committee of 4 people and a board of 5 people, and we have all reviewed all of the plans. We have all of us walked on the site to see everything, and we are supporting it unanimously and enthusiastically.
Okay. Great. Good to hear. Thank you.
Thanks.
name's...
Sorry. Yes, one of those pink speaker slips would be great. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dieter DuPont. I live at 118 Eucalyptus Hill Circle. I'm a neighbor. I'm also on the board of directors. And from what Carol was saying as far as the board, the board is fully in favor of the proposal. We believe that it's going to improve the look of the housing units, the four of them together. As a neighbor, I have a direct view of the property from the front of my house, and I've got no problem with the proposal the way it's being presented. So, like I said, I just want to repeat what Carol was saying as far as we've worked with the owners extensively, had several meetings, and we came to the conclusion that this would be a proposal that we can support.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks.
Hello. I think Mr. Duras was next.
Well, we're coming up together.
Oh, you can?
Yeah,
Yes, sure.
we wanted to come up together since we're neighbors. We're next door neighbors on Overlook Lane.
Okay.
And, well, go ahead, Pete.
You could state your names.
My name is Peter DeRoss. I live at 1654 Overlook Lane, directly behind the new project. I've been there since 1976. It will directly impact our view of the islands and such. And when we did our second story remodel, we went to extensive design consideration to lower, so it would not impact the view of any of the neighbors. And we lowered the structure, and I see there's a lot of split level buildings here, and I don't see why they couldn't lower the building cut into the hillside and lower down the roof lines, and they'd still be able to get the square footage they need for their rooms and such, and still maintain their city and ocean views.
Okay.
So I'd like to.
You're making a similar comment?
Yeah, I'm Dana Meladale. I'm at 1700 Overlook Lane, right next door. Actually, it is going to impact my view even more because at this point, I'm showing the picture of the property. That's the roof line. They're projecting it out.
If you can put it down so it can be in the camera.
Oh, if you can see here.
Turn it the other direction.
This way?
Yep.
Let me see. Oh, well, there we go.
There you go.
So they're proposing to build it straight out. So that is, my little view right there would be obliterated. It would completely obliterate my ocean view, what they're proposing.
Okay. All right.
That would devalue my property.
Mhm.
So that's a big consideration for me.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Okay, was there anyone else that wanted to speak on this project? Seeing no one, will go to questions from the board, and you gentlemen can come back up. Bob, questions?
My only question is there any way you can work with these people to preserve their views and still accomplish what you're trying to accomplish?
Well, yeah, I would love to. We are locked in the grade on the back. We're at grade. So if we were to drop plate, we would be subterranean. And then having to step, it doesn't work. So without getting into regrading the entire site and the pool, I think we're flush with where we are.
And pool? There's a pool back here?
There is a pool. I'm going to show you in this overview. So the pool is right down that hill. So our site is, where we are proposing this edge is flush with grade. So
with the street, you mean?
No, with the just back of grade there and all these other grades next to us. So we'd be, dropping the back of the house down below grade.
Could you not redistribute your square footage and have more on the ground floor, less on the upper floor?
No, we've maxed out this little lot. It's at 2,300 square feet. There's really nowhere to go.
Okay, because that is your lot line right there.
Yep. It even goes around our little entry, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
further questions from me.
All right. Kevin?
Okay. Well, let's talk about the plate heights then. Where are you guys with those?
Sure, yeah, let's get over to the elevations. So we're coming in, the garage is below the existing, so we've got to get, because the garage is lower grade, so we've got to come up from the garage and come up from the entry to be able to reach this existing grade at the back. So we originally had a design where this front was broken and we had a split level here, but that doesn't do anything for our overall height. So we're at an 8-foot lower plate, and then we don't call it a plate in there. Let's see if we do. I believe we have an 8-foot on the second floor too. I'm sorry, Kevin, we're not calling that out.
Scale?
Do a scale.
And then the roof pitch is matching existing?
Match existing, yep. Thank you. Yeah. 8-foot plate on the second floor.
Okay. And there's, this roof style is consistent throughout the development?
Yes.
Are there any other examples of other types of roof there?
There really aren't. You mean like a flat roof option? Yeah.
Okay, those are my questions.
Questions, Amy?
The materials are all going to match what's existing, right?
Yep.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. I can see why you have designed this the way you have. It makes, there's a logic to it in relation to the existing roof system, and it's very consistent with what's there now. But it seems like it might be worth exploring ways to bring this roof down instead of coming out with a gable end here to have this be a shed. And that means redesigning your some major aspects of the current roof design. But it seems like it would be a great benefit to your neighbors if there was a way to bring that down.
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Just note from staff, this is something that the Single Family Design Board deals with quite often, is private views.
Right.
And the design boards are not allowed to take private views into consideration. We can't, the city does not take responsibility for private views. If there is a proven impact to a public view from a right-of-way, then absolutely you can take that into consideration. When it comes from private property, we don't take that into consideration.
Well, we're at the same time, it's true that there's no ordinance that prevents you from blocking your neighbor's view. But we do encourage neighborhood cooperation, and we do encourage people to meet with their neighbors when their houses or their buildings are going to be impacting their neighbors, and to try and come up with a solution that's agreeable to the neighbors. So anyway, it seems to me like there's a way to bring that roof line down, or at least it should be studied. But that's a comment. We'll start with Bob for comments.
Well, I would echo that comment. I don't have any further comments.
Okay. Kevin?
Well, I think the applicant has done a good job to really try and drive the heights down and be respectful as possible. I suppose there's many alternatives to the roof layout and roof design that might make a small impact to the overall mass, but then it becomes out of character with its neighbors and this little development. So I think it's acceptable as proposed. I think, yeah, I don't see many alternatives to the layout that, other than reducing the size of the unit. So I think it's acceptable.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same thought as Kevin, especially because you've already have low plate heights. Usually when we get into this kind of situation, we find like 10-foot plate heights or maximizing that. So with 2 8-foot plate heights, I think that it's kind of moving in the right direction where it's keeping the continuity of that development but keeping it at a minimum height. And I think matching the same kind of rhythm of the roof lines makes sense.
Okay, well, I see an alternative that might also make sense without being too impactful. To me, it seems like there's a couple of ways that you could reduce the visual impact. One is that you have 5 steps up from the garage level up to the entrance level, and or 6 rather. So that's 3 feet. Yeah.
Yep.
And that your second floor also could be, it looks to me like it would be possible, for example, to shift some of it in this direction so that the master bedroom area was set back further, and that this part of the house could be lower and this could be higher. So you would stay at grade. This is just a comment. Let me finish. It's just an idea. Seems to me like it'd be worth exploring. Let me ask you a question. Have you explored that idea?
We have.
Okay. Yeah.
The locking point is that this plate is set. So even if we lower this, the second floor is still above this garage that's locked. We're still locked in right there.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But then, if you're coming up 3 feet, doesn't this have an 8-foot plate as well?
Yes.
So how can this be 3 feet higher than this, and both have an 8-foot plate and have a second floor that's uniform over the top? You must have a big gap.
You're right. The garage is taller. Yep.
The garage is less tall. The
taller.
You're raising the plate height on the garage.
The garage has a taller plate height. Yes.
Already has a taller plate height.
Yes, exactly.
Well, yeah. So I didn't notice that before. Well, if I were to make a motion on this project, I would send it back to meet with your neighbors and study alternative ways to lower the visual impact. That would be my comment on it. But how other board members can chime in.
Again, as Matthew said, we don't really have the ability to influence the project with regard to private views.
Mm-hmm.
However, I can see, conflicts with your neighbors and.
Yeah, we have what's called a good neighbor policy that is part of our ordinance that encourages people to develop designs that are not impactful to their neighbors.
I think that's important. I think that should be considered.
So I'll go ahead and make that motion. We'll just vote on it. So the motion would be to restudy the design, to meet with the neighbors and restudy the design to come up with a version that is less has less visual impact. So we need a seconder, if there's a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 2 opposed. So,
I mean,
there you go. So we need another motion.
Mr. Chair, can I have a quick comment?
Sure.
The other locking point is our grade at back. So even if we drop that front entry, then we're below grade at the rear.
Right.
So I mean, we are at the 2 8-foot plates, and we have been trying to.
You could also have a split level, bottom level.
We certainly could.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. It's not ideal.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that just what's being proposed, what's existing, and what's being proposed is not out of character with what's there. I don't think that the mass bulk and scale is exceeding what this lot can hold. So.
Nor do I.
Okay. So
But
I guess my
Mhm.
motion, action may be taken. Would this just be for basically project design approval?
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. So it would be indefinite, it would be project design approval with indefinite continuance back to the full board. With the comment that to provide the standard like material boards and details, landscape plan if anything is changing. Those would be the comments.
Okay. So we have a motion. We need a seconder.
I will second that.
Second by Kevin. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So
normally we have more members on the board.
Yeah. We
And
wouldn't have
we're
a
supposed to have an odd number.
Yeah, right.
For this reason.
Mr. Chair, if it does help, the HOA is 27 other members, and they have all reviewed it, and those are many neighbors. And it is also quite similar proposal to the proposal that was approved in 2000. Even this has a lower plate height on this second part than the previously approved proposal.
Mm-hmm.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, I understand that you don't want to cut in the grade, but it can be done. Is that correct?
It can be done. So what we have is we have 5 feet until our property line, and then it's the HOA's property. So then we're retaining, we're dropping ourselves into the hillside, cutting view, and then we're retaining someone else's property. It's just not ideal.
Okay.
I mean, we, I mean, the roof line, it's already.
I think the roof line can be brought down too. I think this could be made a shed without a lot of trouble.
I don't think it's going to look as good.
I think there's a way to make it work.
Because the garage is already existing,
Mm-hmm.
and then they're keeping 2 8-foot plate heights.
If you look at like the existing buildings, like the, you know, you do have these long.
Yeah, but
the
on
neighborhood is
side-
composed of big, long, low-sloping shed roofs like that. So to me, it would fit in with the neighborhood just to make that big shed roof. And it would lower it substantially. This corner would be lowered substantially. So Yeah. So since we have a split board, your alternative, now we're filled up for the next meeting, so it would be a month continuance.
It would be a month and a half continuance.
Month and a half.
It would be the 23rd of
April.
I was going to suggest you come back when we have a different board composition.
Yes.
But we're
Well,
split.
We're only talking about another 2 weeks.
Hmm?
Well, we're talking about another 2 weeks beyond the 1 month we would normally continue this for. Yeah, if we're in an impasse now, we've got to do something. We've got to give the client or the applicant direction.
Yeah.
And mine would be, as you stated earlier, work with your neighbors and try to find ways to reduce the height of the building.
Yeah. So I think that's where we are. You have a split vote.
Okay.
You're being continued to the next available meeting,
Okay.
which is April 23rd.
Are we okay on the footprint, the general footprint, so we can go into engineering? If it's just a roof change.
Well, I mean, that's your prerogative.
Right.
I mean, I can't say that for sure because that's part of the project design approval.
Sure.
But
We start spinning a little bit of a circle just with the HOAs sort of, we approved it first and then come here. So then, we're in this sort of downward spiral. So if there's any way we can come up with a way to avoid that.
What was the vote for the HOA?
Unanimous approval.
All the way across.
Well, was that all members of the HOA or just the board of directors?
Yeah, that's a good question. It starts off with the architectural board and then it goes to all members.
But you have 2 members here who.
No, they're on another street. They're a street up in the Riviera.
They're not members of your HOA.
No, this is a private street. You can't actually see this house from the street.
So it's continuance to April 23rd. That's the motion.
Do we have any comments or?
The comments, there's we have a
There's
split vote.
There's no vote, so we're not going to have a vote. Okay.
Right. I mean, we could state that half the board felt the design as proposed was acceptable, and the other half felt it should
be restudied.
Restudied, yeah. Sorry.
What's to assure that we'll have 5 members next time?
There's no assurance, unfortunately. No. We had actually 2 projects that were canceled today because we didn't have full boards. They were
3.
supposed to be heard. 3.
3.
They were supposed to be heard today. Some of them have been extended for more than a month already, and now they're being put off again because of lack of members. Sorry.
We do lack 1 member. This is not a full board at this point. We need 1 person.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. So
do we need a motion to adjourn?
It's not a motion, no, but I was just going to, Bob, you weren't part of this, but we started having a quote at the end of, an architectural quote at the end of our board meetings.
Oh.
So this one this evening is from a gentleman named Balkrishna Doshi, who is the Pritzker Prize winner of 2018.
Yeah. Heard that on NPR this afternoon.
Yeah, it's quite a fellow. And this is a quote from one of the articles about him. He said that we used to think a house was a temple. Now we call it a box. I think the most important thing is that our subtle nuances and our sensitivities, if we cannot really allow them to connect with the unknown, the unexperienced, I think new thoughts don't come because surprise is one of the very important elements for creativity. That concludes our meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.